I'm gonna let you in on a tiny little secret. The fact is, most of our clients don't actually move to Columbia, South Carolina. That's right. About 98% of our clients, if not 99%, move to the suburbs around Columbia. Talking about Lexington, Irmo, Lake Murray, Blythewood, Northeast Columbia, and even pushing out to the more rural areas as far as Kershaw County. But with that said, many of you ask me about Columbia. As one of the benefits of the suburbs is if you need to head downtown, it's really not that far, and we'll talk about that. So that's why in this video, I'm gonna take you on a tour of Columbia, South Carolina.
And as I take you on a tour of the area, we're gonna talk about some of the pros of the area as well as some of the cons. We're gonna take you to the local hospitals, the parks, shopping districts, and so much more. As well, I'm gonna answer the question, how big of a college town is Columbia really? All that and so much more, so let's go get started. All right, so my original intent was to get started at the Riverfront Park over in Columbia. However, the biggest issue is it's closed right now because obviously we're coming off the backside of Hurricane Helene. Now, with that said, this is the interesting part about it, that we talk about cons, right? Flooding. This hurricane that we dealt with, winds were the biggest issues we had here in the Midlands of South Carolina, with trees down, power lines, and so much more. Rain was not as big of an issue here as it was back in the 2015 storm, where we did see a lot of flooding in the same area. But it's a river and it flows from the upstate. So all the rain they had in the upstate came down, making this river come up to a level where it's flooded over there, flooded over here in the West Columbia Park. And there's even neighborhoods over in West Columbia they had to evacuate on the river. And so that's why, again, we start off with a con, unfortunately, of flooding in the area. Now, I've told people time and time again, it's easy to avoid. This isn't a prominent thing where the entire area puts you in a floodplain. I haven't had a single client that's bought in a floodplain or has a house that's flooded. There are areas in the area that are prone to flooding and do have floodplains, but again, it's not the majority. Either way, the Riverfront Park, benefit of it, again, the water has receded now, but of course they got to go through and make sure all those trails are clear of the trees and debris. But you got this walkway that starts over here in West Columbia, runs all the way through Columbia. They're going to continue building it, where one day they say it'll connect, where you can take this all the way up to Greenville, which is crazy to think, right? But at this point, it's still an awesome feature to have the Riverfront Walk, really cool spot. But again, unfortunately, starting out with a con of flooding in the area. So even though I can't take you down to the Riverfront Park over here on the Columbia side, we're still gonna get the tour kicked off right here to give you that best reference point of Columbia, South Carolina. So let's hop in and go to our next destination here in Columbia, South Carolina.
All right, so again, we're pulling out of the Columbia Riverfront Park onto Huger Street, Huger. It is pronounced Huger Street, trust me on that one. But either way, we're gonna be talking about a lot as we do this. The local economy, some expansions that are coming to the area I'm super excited about. But we'll get kind of kicked off with the basics. So first off, to the left would have taken us to 126, which eventually connects you to I-20 and I-26, Malfunction Junction that I've talked about in many of my other videos. On the way, you're gonna pass the Riverbank Zoo and Garden. It's about 5 minutes up the road. We actually used to have passes. It's a great zoo to check out. And we'll talk about some other fun things to do in the area a little bit later on. Either way, to give you an idea, distance to downtown. So Lexington from downtown Columbia here is about 20 minutes away. Lake Murray is about 20 minutes as well. Same with Irmo, coming in at 20 minutes. Blythewood in the northeast part of Columbia is about 25 minutes. And the village at Sand Hills Mall over in northeast Columbia, it's about 25 minutes from Columbia. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of proximity to all these areas. As I mentioned, really not that far as some would expect. So outside of that, Columbia is the state capital of South Carolina and home to the University of South Carolina. And we'll talk about more in just a little bit here. As far as the size of the area, so let's get started with the city center. So the population comes in at 139,343. It's 137.8 square miles, made up of, ends up being 1,011.1 people per square mile. Now, as I said in the beginning, most people aren't buying in the city center, right? They're buying in the suburbs around the area. And that's where we talk about the population in the metro area. Now, the metro area is pretty much made up of the area that we personally cover. Some of it slightly further out, but either way, Lexington County, Richland County, Kershaw County, Saluda County, Fairfield County, and Calhoun County. It's actually the second largest metropolitan statistical area in the state of South Carolina. And that's since Anderson metropolitan area combined with Greenville following the 2010 census in the upstate. Either way, that ours is 858,302 for population. It's made up of 3,703.1 square miles. Like I said, large area. But that brings it to 228.9 people per square mile. So again, hopefully that gives you a better idea of the area. Now let's circle back to flooding, because I know a lot of people are going to ask, since I mentioned it. So Lake Murray is essentially the dammed up Saluda River. On the east side of the lake, Saluda River runs down to meet with the Broad River, which then forms the Congaree River, hence the three rivers reference that you'll hear when people talking about Columbia. Either way, it creates what I like to call as kind of a bowl all around Columbia. So any of those low-lying areas that are east of the lake, you know, parts of Irmo, even down in Columbia Forest Acres, you'll have that potential for flooding. Once you leave, I mean, going up to even northeast part of Columbia, it kind of leaves that bowl area I talked about. So essentially Lexington, Ballantyne, Chapin, like I said, the higher parts of Irmo, and then on the other side, northeast Columbia, Blythewood are gonna be elevated and don't see as many of the issues. Minus, you know, there's a few streams and lake that can cause issues. So while that's why I say it's not a majority of the area, even around Columbia, as you see with these kind of rolling hills, that don't make the entire area prone to flooding. But as mentioned, Columbia is the home of the University of South Carolina, which we will swing by later. But according to livability.com, it currently ranks Columbia, South Carolina as number 8 top college towns in America. So the short answer is yes, it is a college town. But we'll talk about that just a little bit here as we hop out in the Main Street District.
All right, so we did hop out of the Main Street District. Right behind me is the state capital. As mentioned, Columbia is the capital of South Carolina. And I hop out here for a multitude of reasons. Obviously the state capital, but the Main Street District. So one of the big questions going back that I talked about is how big of a college town is Columbia really? And I'm not gonna lie, obviously it's ranked as one of the top college towns, but one of the things I've loved about the Main Street District, it kind of feels like a separation from all of that college party vibe bar scene. And there is a district that is more geared towards that, I guess is the best way to put it, and we'll stop by there later so you can check it out. But this district here, you got a lot of restaurants that we truly like. Hall's Chop House that we passed earlier, really good upscale steakhouse, Cantina 76, Market on Main, and so many more. Bourbon that we passed behind us. And so a lot of clients I have come out here and they end up liking it a lot more than they expected, because a lot of us are used to these big city centers and we expect it to be the same, and it just doesn't have that same vibe down here, to be 100% honest, at least from my perspective, and a lot of people I have come to the area. As well, what's really awesome is you have the Soda City Market. So every Saturday morning they come out here and they close the street down, and local vendors come in with, you know, their goods that they're selling, as well as, you know, they got food trucks and food cooking out there. And so it's a really good time and a really fun event that a lot of people like to come to. And so again, that's why I hop out here, just because it's definitely worth checking out. Like I said, we go to dinner down here quite often, just because some of these upscale restaurants that you have over here. But either way, we're gonna continue on. I'm gonna show you the rest of Main Street, drive down as we head to our next stop.
All right, so as we hop back in and drive down Main Street, I'm not gonna lie, you may see some college kids because there is some college housing, so you'll see them kind of rushing back and forth for school, but it's quite a bit different than one of the college areas we will stop by later. Either way, on the left, you might have seen Cantina 76 I talked about. On the right is Market on Main, and I'll jump back into more of this, but for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Brandon. My team and I have local real estate agents have truly been helping people from all over the country relocate right here to the Midlands of South Carolina, the Lexington, Columbia, and Lake Murray area. So don't hesitate to reach out. That way you don't have to go it alone. But also on the right, you might have caught eye Taco Sushi. For those that followed me for a while know that in Lexington, they just opened a Taco Sushi on that side of town. On the right, might have caught eye of Hotel. They got a rooftop bar up there, and that's where that Starbucks sign was. There's some parks over here on the left that you'll see. I will point out one of the cons too as we come down here, and you may have seen already, is the parking meters. That's right, it's not free parking in the area. You're gonna have to pay. And whether that's parking at one of the parking structures that are on either side of kind of some of these buildings, or pay at these meters. And I mentioned this in my comparing to Greenville video because they did not have meters up there. It was 2 hours free parking. And speaking of that video, on the left is another park. That's where I actually filmed part of that Columbia versus Greenville video, if you did watch it. On the right is gonna be a Brazilian steakhouse called Cowboy. I haven't personally eaten there, but I had a client that said it was really good. On the left, you might have caught eye of the Columbia Museum of Art. And of course, another annoying things of downtown, I feel like, hit every single red light on this drive, slowing things down. You may have seen buses, so there's quite a bit more public transportation here in Columbia than per se in the Lexington area. Either way, coming at this section here on the left, you're gonna have the Nickelodeon Theater. Past that, you're gonna have the Grand. So the Grand is this super cool bowling alley. It's not like your traditional bowling alley. They got games in there, they got a bar, they got restaurants, really kind of upscale. On the left, on the corner up here, you might catch eye of Woody, and then they got upstairs a rooftop bar, Hendrix. We've been there with work, definitely a cool spot. There's a couple other, if you like, bars. To the left as well, you hit Carolina Western Pub, CWP. That's kind of more of your country line dancing. And as we come up here, you're gonna kind of see kind of more courthouses and that kind of such. But we're gonna be headed to one of the local parks. And before we circle back down to another district that's kind of gonna be up to the right, but either way, I wanna show you this park. And as we make a left here, I want to talk about cost of living, specifically the average cost for the area for those first learning about it. So this is per our last market report sitting here in kind of fall of 2024, right? It's 2024, I can't almost forget what year it is. Median price for our area was right around $280,000. And the average price right around $322,000. Break this down a little further. Irmo came in at $243,000. Northeast Columbia came in at $286,000. East Columbia, right around Forest Acres, around $400,000. Lexington, $315,000. Lake Murray and Irmo Chapin side, $982,000, and Lake Murray on Lexington side, $598,000. I'm not going to break down all the areas, but hopefully this gives you a general idea to compare. You can see it's a lot less than per se Charleston, Greenville, and Charlotte areas. Either way, we're about to pull into our next stop here, and I'm actually pulling into a neighborhood called Governor's Hill. Talk about why that is after the fact, but in the last year, only one property sold in here. These are Charleston style homes, 3,142 square feet for $635,000. Either way, we're gonna hop out and talk about this.
All right, so welcome out to Finlay Park, and as it's going through its current revitalization, to be 100% honest, when we first moved to the area, we came out to visit the park. We grabbed some food, and we're gonna do a picnic in the park, and we were pretty upset when we showed up because it was kind of let go, is the best way to put it, and to be 100% honest, there were a lot of homeless people that were hanging around, and it was just kind of like, you know, not that excited about this great park that everyone talks about. There's plenty of iconic pictures of the waterfall up top with the skyscrapers in the background. But either way, not too long ago, they announced the revitalization of it, and you can see it's in progress, and it's expected by fall of 2025 to be completed. So I'm super excited to see this kind of take place and turn back into what so many people used to talk about what it was, where they did host events down here and so much more in a beautiful park. So excited to see that take shape as we kind of loop to the next place. I'll show you some of the renderings of what it's going to look like, but that's why I wanted to stop over here.
All right, so again, why it's called Governor's Hill. So as we leave Finlay Park, right across the street is actually the Governor's Mansion. I'm not gonna drive by it in this video, but either way, that's where it's gonna be. We're gonna be making a left here and kind of looping back around to another district. I was actually hoping to drive back in front of Finlay Park on the front side, giving you an idea, but I forgot it's a one-way street. Another annoying thing about downtowns is you get these one-way streets from time to time. Either way, we do drive past another park, so kind of perfect about that. And remember, keep in mind, at the end of this, I'm going to be talking about another announcement of some growth coming to the area outside of Finlay Park that we already talked about, the Nets district that's growing that we're talking about, but another area that has a massive growth that's truly going to change the landscape of downtown Columbia. But again, we'll talk about that when we get over there. So as we turn on the right-hand side is going to be the Memorial Park. But again, we're going to be making a left to circle back around. So as far as Columbia itself, so as South Carolina became one of the fastest growing states in the country, Columbia got to reap some of that benefit. I mean, obviously, as I've talked about in other videos, Greenville and Charleston have just grown so much faster, where we have that kind of steady and consistent growing city. And again, you've seen it with a lot of the expansion and growth of the area. And obviously this benefits the economy with these new businesses that we're seeing come to the area. Obviously, Scalp being announced, coming to the Blythewood area just outside of Columbia downtown, but even places like Mark Anthony Brewing and so many others. As well, there's a lot of opportunity zones that they created that have allowed small businesses to continue to grow and thrive in the area, as you saw downtown with all the local shops and restaurants. At this corner, you may notice the Richland County Public Library on the right-hand side. And I did speed this up just to save some time, but at least you can get an idea as we drive to our next destination. And while you see some of the lights can be obnoxious, even in the middle of the day, the traffic isn't per se overwhelming. Yes, there's kind of cars moving around, but it's not the hustle and bustle city as many expect it to be. And so it makes commuting to these areas relatively easy. I mean, don't get me wrong, we got a rush hour, but it's not as bad as many of the neighboring cities we have, like Charlotte, Atlanta, and even Charleston has gotten at this point. So we're gonna be turning right onto Elmwood Avenue. To the left would take us back straight onto 126, so right around the corner from that Columbia Riverfront Park that we were at the beginning. And you may notice that I consistently forget that some of these lanes force you into left turns lane. Again, I'm not a fan of driving downtown either with all these one-way streets and all these lanes that just end so much. We're gonna be making a left onto Bull Street District. I'm gonna be pulling in here to talk about this district a little bit more because you'll start to see it on the right-hand side. And this whole district is ever growing. And again, don't forget, there's another area that we're gonna hit that is going to have a massive revitalization as well. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit.
All right, so we swung by the Bull Street District. I made an entire video about this complex, so we're not gonna tour the entire thing today, but obviously one of the big highlights, Seger Park that sits behind me, home of our minor league baseball team, the Fireflies. Outside of the baseball games here, they do a ton of events though. They do Christmas lights, they do concerts out here and so much more. So such a cool complex that's been growing over the years. That's right, it's not finished yet as you saw with the construction, but tons of great restaurants. Publico that we've eaten at, Iron Hill Brewery on the other side. Again, you'll want to watch that video if you want to live here because they do talk about there's apartment complexes across the way as well as their high-end townhomes on the other side that you can actually purchase and live so that you can walk over to baseball games, food, and so much more. So again, Bull Street District, ever-growing area that's been super cool to see take place. But if you want to learn more about, check out that video, but we'll continue on to the next spot.
All right, so we're headed over to where the colleges are, the Colonial Life Arena, the State Fair, the stadium, and so much more, including the future growth area. But I wanted to loop around this way, mainly to pass Prisma Health, the hospital. A lot of people ask about hospitals in the area. And this hospital is going to be the largest. This is where your pediatric center is going to be, trauma center, the heart hospital. Again, it's the biggest hospital in our area. It's a teaching hospital that's connected to the University of South Carolina Medical School. I didn't talk about it in this video, but they are moving their medical campus over to the Bull Street District, obviously making that proximity right here to the hospital. Now, right now it actually sits next to the VA hospital on another part of Columbia that we're actually not gonna pass in this video. Now, for my personal experience, we personally have our doctors, obviously based on insurance, at Lexington Medical Center, which for reference is over in West Columbia. It's about 5 miles, 12 minutes from downtown Columbia. But our son had to get stitches and we did have to come here to the Children's Hospital. And we really actually like the care that we got over here. You also on the back side, this is just from working on the ambulance back in the day, you have the Ronald McDonald Center. And for those of you that don't know, so the Ronald McDonald Center is kind of a facility that they let people stay at while their kids may be in the hospital. Either way, circling back, you do also have Prisma Health Baptist downtown, as well as you have the old Providence Hospital that I've talked about in other videos, was acquired by MUSC Health, and that is downtown as well. So while I mentioned earlier, there's a VA hospital, it's kind of on the outskirts of downtown, getting closer to Fort Jackson. And so as we come down Hardin Street, we're gonna pass a couple things on the left-hand side. You're gonna pass the Charles Drew Wellness Center, and you do have an indoor community pool there. On the left, we're passing Benedict College and Allen University, both HBCUs in the area. And going back, for those not familiar, the University of South Carolina right here in Columbia was founded back in 1801, which makes it the original USC for my friends out west, that's right. Either way, they have a student enrollment, which they say surpassed 36,000 students just recently, and is the largest college here in the state of South Carolina. On the right, you probably caught I have a shopping center that has Food Lion, Cookout, Chick-fil-A. There's actually a bike shop in there. We had to get our beach cruisers tuned up before going camping the other year, and so we had our bikes tuned up there. All right, so as we're coming into our next destination, it's gonna be 5 Points. And as you can see, they got a lot of construction going on in the area. They've been in the process of making these roads more bike and walk accessible, which I really like. I've always said that one of the best ways to help mitigate traffic is simply add more ability to bike and walk places where right now, anyone that's been to the area and even the ratings online pretty much say it's car dependent.
All right, welcome out to 5 Points. This is a pretty diverse district for two reasons. On this way, you got a lot of college housing right on the other side. So easy for the college kids to come down and hit these bars, and you've probably already seen some college themed bars as we were walking in here. On the other side is Shandon, older established neighborhood. So that's why you get this kind of mix in here, both that college vibe, but then also you have upscale restaurants like Saluda, really good places like Polly's Front Porch. So really just a mixed vibe in here places as well. Very famous for their St. Patty's Day party. During the day, parade, that kind of fun stuff. At night, the concert, outdoor bars and things like that. So like I said, kind of a mixed vibe here. But again, at night, to me, just personally, more of that college themed vibe per se than the Main Street district. But let's continue on. This is again the 5 Points district.
All right, so as we leave the 5 Points district and kind of circle back around, again, you'll see a lot of stores, restaurants, and actually just around the corner over here is one of the top ranked restaurants in the area. It's called Mr. Friendly's. It's a Southern cafe, and I'll be honest, we haven't personally eat there, but every time I go by, it's pretty packed. So I guess it's worth checking out, and maybe we're gonna have to do it. I have been to the Saluda's upscale place. That is really good in the area. But either way, as I said, a lot of this starts pulling us into all that college housing as we get closer to the campus that we're gonna swing by later. On the left, you may catch eye of Maxie Gregg Park. This park has a lot of green space, as you can see over here, but on the top side, there's actually a pool. But as far as weather in Columbia, our winter average is a high of 58 and a low of 38. And we do see less than an inch of snow a year, so not a lot of it. The summer average is 89 high and 70 low, and it is very humid, just to be 100% honest. We get 46 inches of rain on average per year, and just for reference, the average in the United States is 38 inches. On the left, we're passing USC's Greek Village. So we're gonna be looping around, but to give you an idea, straight would actually take you over to West Columbia, which I have a driving tour coming up in the near future about it. So you'll wanna subscribe if you wanna check that out, because a lot of people have started to ask me about the West Columbia area. So coming up on this corner on the left, you'll notice that's Founders Park. Having some construction done, as you see, but this is home to the University of South Carolina's baseball team. So as we loop around on the right, it's Columbia Craft Brewing. I haven't been to the facility personally, but I've had a couple of their beers and I really do like them. This area's expanded quite a bit. The street actually did not used to go through, but it does now, obviously, as you see. And on the right, they're building a hotel right here on the right-hand side. This is supposed to be an upscale hotel. I talked about earlier how they're trying to expand the area, and we'll talk about this more later, of trying to attract more events and venues to the area. And so part of that obviously is the hotel having more of a hotel upscale. And again, we'll talk about the dynamic that's gonna change even more so when it comes to this, besides just a upscale hotel.
All right, so we're out here at the Colonial Life Arena, and actually just behind this is also gonna be the convention center. So that's why we'll stop here. Obviously the Colonial Life Arena, home to the University of South Carolina basketball team. You can see, I don't know if you can see the street sign over here, named it Don Staley Way, because obviously women's basketball with USC and their recent domination with their championships in college, but obviously another concert venue for the area. You know, you do see signs over here, Jelly Roll, Elton John came here for his finale tour and things like that. But with that said, I always tell people 18,000 seats. So a much smaller venue than some of the biggers. I know for the bigger concerts, we've gone down to Atlanta when we saw Luke Combs, because you're talking about 70,000 down there. And I have other friends that go up to Charlotte because their stadium up there, Bank of America, also going to be about 70,000. So much smaller venue. We still do get a lot of concerts, but not as much of the big ones that I know a lot of people seek out. Either way, let's continue on.
So outside of the zoo and the Soda City Market I talked about, there's so much to do in the area, which is one of the benefits. I mean, we have multiple state parks, right? You have the Congaree National Park not too far outside of the city. You have Sesquicentennial State Park in the northeast part of Columbia, not too far from here. You have the Riverbank Zoo, as I mentioned, as well as the river walks, where of course you can go to kayak fish. As far as then, of course, you have Lake Murray, the 50,000 acre play place not too far from here. You have Lake Carolina, the private lake in the Lake Carolina neighborhood. The left is the Koger Center for Arts. This is a much smaller venue where you'll catch more of those plays, smaller shows, because comparative in size, it's only 2,256 seats. You have the museum that we saw downtown, but of course there's also the South Carolina Museum. Didn't pass in this video, but is downtown. You also have a ton more venues that we didn't hit. You have Township Auditorium for smaller comedy shows, right? Shane Gillis, Matt Rife, and others have been there, so much more. Talked about earlier too, for the bars, you have line dancing, you have music venues like Tin Roof, which right next door you have the Senate that has music venues. It's really a diverse culture and vibe that whether you're young and looking to party and go to bars and all that stuff, it's a good time. Or if you're seasoned and just kind of looking for a nice night out on the town, there's plenty of opportunities for that, where you can go to a nice sit-down steak restaurant like Hall's Chop House and then head over to catch a play or a show. All right, so I came back over the weekend when the kids were inside studying, but we're out here at the Horseshoe out here at the University of South Carolina, kind of the heart of the campus. Obviously, with everything surrounded around it, we did pass the School of Business earlier. The School of Law is over there, and I'm not going to dive into too many of the details because I know we talked about them while driving over. And we're going to talk about the stadium and the expansion happening to the college at our next stop. But of course, the other reason I come out here is because this is a phenomenal place if you're trying to get some photos done. Just to be real, right? There's some people out here doing it now. We've done some Christmas cards out here and so much, because just a beautiful spot in the campus right here at the Horseshoe at the University of South Carolina. Either way, let's continue on, and we're going to talk about that expansion I was talking about at the next stop. And going back, things too, there's a ton of festivals that happen as well. You have the Greek Festival here in Columbia. You have Irmo's Okra Strut, Gilbert's Peach Festival, Columbia's International Festival, Columbia Shrimp and Grits Festival, Rosewood Crawfish, and of course holiday festivals as well that happen. On the left is going to be California Dreamin'. So obviously, being from California, this was interesting to us to have a restaurant California Dreamin'. Either way, we ended up going to the one in downtown Charleston, but this one is actually in the historic Union Station. But to give you an idea of the restaurant, it is a mix between American food, seafood, steak, sandwiches, burgers, shrimp, oysters, you name it. We do want to come check out the Columbia one because it was good. So on the right, you may notice the old Capital City Bomber Stadium. I recently talked about this in another video, how they used to be a Class A minor league baseball team that played here in Columbia, South Carolina, as well where the South Carolina Gamecocks baseball team used to play. Unfortunately, the minor league team ended up relocating to Greenville. As we saw earlier, the minor league team did come back to Columbia when they built Segra Park and the Fireflies came to the area. Add on another interesting with this, one of the old managers is the one who launched the Lexington County Blowfish Collegiate League over in Lexington. I talked about the details of that in that Touring Lexington video if you want to learn more about that. Either way, the interesting part of this as well is it was rumored that the stadium was going to be torn down. But announcements came back again, because this has been talked about numerous times, of trying to find a way to revitalize this historic stadium and not tear it down.
All right, so we got two things going on out here that I'm going to talk about. Obviously, the big one we'll talk about second, but behind me, the South Carolina State Fair. So every year, the South Carolina State Fair comes right here to the fairgrounds. Outside of that, you also have a bunch of conventions that happen throughout the year down here. We've been to home and garden shows and things like that. But either way, the State Fair. Right across the street from it, you might have seen as we were pulling up, Williams-Brice Stadium, home of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, this is the big announcement. Obviously, outside of being the college football stadium, part of the SEC, can't complain, right? Exciting to come watch. Even though they haven't taken home a national championship, still fun to watch. But USC announced that they own a bunch of land on the other side of this, and they have announced that they're going to be growing and expanding on that, which is really awesome and phenomenal. A lot of people have talked about that. There's a potential that this can look like the Battery down in Atlanta, if you've ever been to Atlanta Braves game, where outside they have townhomes, hotels, restaurants, and so much more. What I really hope it exists is parking. If you've ever been to a college game, one of the big things is this parking lot is used, tailgate and all that. However, unfortunately, the State Fair, one of the days of the State Fair typically ends up on a day of a game. And let me tell you, it is absolute chaos. Don't try and go to the State Fair if you're going to the game. It's chaos, right? Just because you got all these people coming here and here. And so that's what I'd be really excited for, is to have a new place for tailgating, parking, and all that, to be able to walk to the game. For a while, we hadn't been to a game, and we finally did it. And goodness, every year now we try and make an effort to do it. We're doing it again this year. Such a fun time. But either way, that's one of the really exciting things is the expansion of that, because going back when I talked about the Colonial Life Arena, right, the size of it. Well, the question becomes, they're trying to attract a lot more events to the area. Now, obviously, being an open stadium, don't get me wrong, you've seen open air concerts, but most of them are in the closed air. So a lot of people are curious what comes of this when they say they're trying to attract more people to the area. That's the answers we don't have yet, but super exciting for growth of our area. Again, I hope this taught you a lot more about Columbia itself, because I have a lot of people that ask me, what is that downtown Columbia area like? Now, again, as I talked about in the beginning, most people are looking at moving to the suburbs around Columbia. And so that's why I made this series here that you'll want to check out, where I break down those different areas. I break down Lexington, Irmo, Chapin, Northeast Columbia, Blythewood, and so much more. So you can learn about the areas to see which one best fits for you.